Welcome back. Joining me now for a closer look at the day's markets action is Anthea Gardner from Cartesian Capital. Anthea, thanks so much for joining us today. Now, it seemed like the relief rally was running out of steam, but then we got those U.S. weekly jobless claims sinking to 233,000, retreating from a one-year high. I guess that's, a positive note for the labor market, and then just kind of refuting those recession fears, right?
Sure. Taoleng, I think someone's just switched off the main lights in my building, so I'm sitting in the dark.
At least we know it's not load shedding. At least we know.
The main switch is like all the way down there, so you're going to have to deal with me in the dark. Sorry, I look like a vampire. Anyway, so back to the market. Wait. Oh, yes. So the relief rally. So what a week it's been, right? Up, down, up, down. I think South African stocks have been quite resilient compared to other markets. Predominantly, I think we went into the elections, we were trading fairly cheaply. General sentiment to South Africa was definitely turned positive since then. We've had good election outcomes, more consistent electricity supply, logistics getting sorted out, promise of lower interest rates. It's looking a bit like the perfect situation or the Goldilocks moment for South Africa.
Yes.
And so, it was funny today because we traded mostly in the red, most of the day in the red. And then when those jobless claims numbers came out, geez, the market just rallied and almost a full percent. It was quite something. And I think, so the jobless number, initial claims decreased by 17,000 to 233,000 for last week, and really reflecting stronger than expected labor markets. And so what we saw yesterday was that the Fed funds futures was pricing in a 69% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut in September. Today, that has now moved down to 57.5%, and I think by Monday it will be even less. I think if we do get a cut from the Fed in September, I think it'll only be 25 basis points. I mean, I can't believe that just 3 or 4 days ago they were even talking about emergency cuts. Like, that was never going to happen, right?
It's crazy how markets just move in relation to these data points that, are related to the Fed's decisions. And I was also just quite shocked when I saw, headlines about emergency rate cuts coming through, a 50 basis points rate cut coming through, when we've had most part of the year no cuts at all.
Correct. And the U.S. labor market is so strong, you can see that. So one little data point that scared everyone, it's interesting how that happened. Like, I don't think the Fed even needs to cut in September. But the market seems to think 25, so I'm going to go with it.
All right, let's leave that alone and get into some company news. NovoNordisk out with results. I think yesterday, sales were really good. Well, objectively good, but they cut their outlook, which then, sent the share tumbling. It is, a tough market. They've got, tough competition on that front, and everyone's trying to get a piece of that weight loss market pie.
Yeah, Taoleng, this is a very interesting one because their competitors, Eli Lilly with Ozempic, NovoNordisk does Wegovy. But it's not just that. I was reading recently about, especially in the US, they're now making, if you want to call it, imitation drugs. And so I thought NovoNordisk's results were fairly decent considering, but the share really fell. And it's really this concern about how much market share they got and what's the competition like. And I think it's the fact that you can get, and I'm not sure I want to call it fake weight loss drugs, but you know that the pharmacies can produce their own.
Yes.
And so there is a problem with the insurance companies or healthcare companies paying for these drugs in the US. So people are, the healthcare companies, insurers are now cutting down and saying, no, you're not diabetic. You don't need this drug. So I'm sorry, I'm not paying for it. And these things are expensive. So I think that's what's causing the concern for NovoNordisk at the moment.
All right, let's move over to some local company news. MTN releasing a trading update late yesterday after markets closed. And I guess those numbers really only being digested today. The group's warned of a loss due to currency woes, but that share price up 10%.
Can you believe it?
I'm just like, have markets just priced all the woes in?
Yeah, it's about expectations, isn't it? So MTN gave us a trading update saying that they're expecting HEPS to drop by 140% to 150% for the first year. And then, of course, the Naira with depreciation is another problem. But I think what the market liked was that MTN are mitigating these risks by bolstering their Nigerian operations. They've undertaken strategic overhaul of their tower lease agreements. They're negotiating with IHS and American Tower Corporation. And so it looks like MTN are doing their best in Nigeria to sort things out, basically.
Let's get into SAPI, some positive news on that front. Profits up 28% and sales rising 3%. Now, this is a quarter that's traditionally the weakest for the business. Talk to us about what you made of those numbers.
I thought they were great numbers. SAPI's been a company that has struggled. You know, we kind of struggled when they moved from their magazine, their glossy paper, and things had to change, and we were going to the internet and not buying our glossy magazines anymore. But they came out and said profit rose 28% year on year, mostly driven by demand and pricing in the dissolving pulp segment. And so while the general paper market remains sluggish, SAPI has managed to increase sales volumes and profitability, which has been great. I think that there is definitely uncertainty in the global macroeconomic outlook, but SAPI expects continued strength in this dissolving pulp market, and so potentially a rebound even in the graphic paper demand. So I think a decent report from them.
A decent report, but that's not your stock pick. What are you hanging your hat on today?
So Shoprite came out last week as well and reported, despite having lower inflation, their like-for-like sales continue to grow. They continue to gain market share. So I'm hanging my hat on Shoprite. I think this promise of lower interest rates should help or should give some relief to the consumer, and that may, I don't think the shopper is going to shop up. I don't think it's going to be such a relief that suddenly everyone's going to Woolworths. I think Shoprite basket will increase, and maybe people will throw in a luxury good or two, which at the moment is difficult. So, and Shoprite just generally has very good operations, and they've done well, I think, to maintain through a difficult macroeconomic situation in South Africa.
And I mean, also Checkers 6060, you ask every second person you meet, they are using Checkers 6060 religiously. Anthea, thank you so much.
Even into the office.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us and just taking us through the day's markets action. That was Anthea Gardner from Cartesian Capital.